Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Saturday evening session on Gifted World. I'm Siddharth. I am one of the people who run this platform. I work with GenWise. We are an organization based in India that helps provide enrichment and nurture talented students all across India and the UAE. And Gifted World is a platform that has been founded by the Northwestern University Center for Talent Development, educational initiatives, and GenWise. We are here as a community. Our goal is to be a place for curious students, interested parents to learn more about the world. And yes, your parents are welcome for today's session. Okay. So Gifted World started in early 2024. Some of you here have been in sessions with us since 2024, right? And we primarily work with students starting from about grade 5 all the way until grade 10, though, of course, older people, curious adults are always welcome. Uh, Today is the first session in a new series that we have started called Many Roads Exploring Careers. Our goal with this series is often when we're in school, we know that we are working towards some goals. Like for many of you, it's you have to do things so that your grade 10 exam goes well. Then your grade 10 exam goes well, and then like, now it's just started. Now grade 12 exam has to go well. Grade 12 exam goes well. Like, now it's just started. Now college is starting. And it feels like the goalposts are always moving and you never know when you reach the goal. So this series is about talking about that process. We don't just a lot. Our master classes that we run for 2.5 years now are focused on sort of knowledge and concepts, but here we're focused on the journeys. What are the journeys that are out there, and what are so each session we'll be talking to someone who hopefully has crossed a good number of goalposts. Maybe they're not at the final goalpost yet, uh, and getting reflections on how has the journey been, right? What's it like, and uh, what would you think is important when to tell to yourself if you were back in school, right? So feel free to keep sending in your questions. We're a small group, so I'm going to trust you to not unmute yourself and talk randomly in between. If you do that, I will have to exercise my powers as host and like mute all of you. But don't make it come to that. Okay. Many of you have been in several sessions from me, and you know I am usually a very kind host, but we take uh, being disciplined about when we talk seriously. Okay. So thank you, everyone. With that, I am excited to introduce Karthik. Now, I first met Karthik. Let me remember this. Yeah, so I was walking around. I had to go to a bank to do some work. And I had been told that there's this GenWise parent who wants to talk about uh, something, talk about running a masterclass because we'd already been running Gifted World for some time and he was curious and wanted to do a masterclass. I said, okay, it's a 10-minute conversation. I'll mostly like God knows these parents, they're all enthusiastic about different things. Probably nothing will come of it. So as I'm walking to the bank, I give Karthik a call. And then I spent 40 minutes, I think, walking around in the parking lot of the bank. Okay. Because it was just such an interesting conversation that we had. And that resulted in, you can see the YouTube recording of this masterclass about the inverse square law and why do inverse square laws show up so often in physics and the world. Right. So Karthik, that's how I met Karthik on a phone call. And only later, well after that, did I discover that he's a. Well, actually, sorry, I knew he was a software engineer going into the call, which was also why I was skeptical that the call would be any good. But what do you know? There are really interesting software engineers out there. Maybe some of them are your parents. So that aside, I wanted to start off this series with a talk by Karthik because he's someone who has, every time I talk to him, he has so many insights about the world from not just a lens of curiosity, but also a lens. I think he's a really good educator. And we really like people who are good educators in Gen Ys, whether or not they have the degrees for it. Okay. So with that, I think I have talked enough. And so it would be, so we'd like to get started. And I'm going to start us off with a bit of a teaser. So Karthik and I spoke earlier this week about what exactly we're going to talk about. One of the things that he said that I'd like us to return to in a bit, but he said that he views software engineering as a creative profession. And that stands in sharp contrast to what we tend to see over the course of our schooling, where engineering tends to be, at least I was in this situation where I disliked mathematics in school. I only like high school mathematics turned me off from mathematics, and I was like, I do not want to do mathematics. Then I ended up like I teach math to a bunch of you, and I did a lot of math in my life. So in the same way, this statement that software engineering is a creative profession really stood out to me. But to start off with, Karthik, hi. You wanted to share a bit about your journey to where you got here, and maybe were there like some of those shifting goalposts or what felt like goalposts along the way? I'd love to hear from you a bit of what do you feel is your journey to here?
Oh, definitely. Hi, Siddharth. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you for sharing that anecdote of how we met. That was quite amusing. And I was in Goa when we were speaking. So when we spoke for the first time, we were on holiday. I was in a resort in Goa. And I had said, I'm talking to this person, just give me 10 minutes. And then I was walking around the swimming pool. The kids were waiting to jump into the pool. And then beyond the point, they got tired. They jumped in. I did like 40 rounds around the pool rather than inside the pool. It was a great conversation.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Thanks. Great to be here. And really nice to see so many kids. IPL is going on. Summer vacation is happening. So many interesting things happening. And so many kids have shown up. So really nice to see all the curiosity that kids are showing here. So hopefully we can add some value here. So yeah, how did I get into software? You had introduced me very well, Siddharth. So I'll tell you what I do, and I will give you two versions of how I ended up here. And I think that will be very educational for all the kids here as well. So my dad was a programmer, right? So he's been writing software since 1981 or 82 or something. So his initial code he wrote in punch cards. I don't know if you guys even know of punch cards, but no keyboard, right? Like pieces of paper where holes are punched and machines would. So the program is punched as holes in little bits of paper and you feed that into the systems. So my dad has been a software engineer since then. So growing up, a lot of conversations, a lot of chit chat with my dad used to be around software and how to write good code and all of that. So by the time I was like 6th or 7th, I was really interested in software coding. So I was coding since I was in 4th grade, right? So which is very unusual now. I mean, very unusual back then, which is very common now. But back then, I think computers were unusual, right? So coding since 3rd grade or 4th grade was very unusual. But my dad kind of gave us all those opportunities. So I loved writing code as a kid. And 11th standard and 12th standard, I knew that my elective was going to be computer science. So my school had biotech and all interesting stuff, but I was very clear computer science. So I did my undergraduate in computer science. Then I did my master's in computer science. I did master's by research. So I looked at chip design and things like that. Then I joined NVIDIA, which some of you will know it as a gaming company. Some of you will know it as an AI company. But I joined NVIDIA which is a chip design company as well. And then I've spent 16 years here building multiple teams, writing software. So when you see, it's a straight line, right? Like from third grade software to elective CS, BTech CS, Master CS, computer science engineer, manager. So it seems like a very straight line, which is a version of how I got here. But the other version of how I got here is every couple of years or so, I was tired and bored with what I was doing. And I was looking around seeing, is there something more interesting I can do? And I didn't have any plan, right? Like I had no plan whatsoever that 15. So when I was in 11th standard, for example, I had no plan that 15 years later into my career, this is what I want to be. So 11th and 12th, computer science looked like fun. So I picked it. Then undergrad, computer science looked like fun. And I almost accidentally went into computer science. I was supposed to go into electrical engineering, but ended up there, right? So then I joined NVIDIA by accident. I was supposed to join a different company, then, but this offer came later. I came here by accident. And then in NVIDIA, I joined the only team that wasn't doing gaming and graphics. So back then, when I joined, all of NVIDIA was focused on graphics. But there was this small pocket of like 5 or 10 people who were doing non-graphics work on NVIDIA hardware. So it was the uncool part of NVIDIA, right? So I joined the uncool part of NVIDIA because it sounded fun, right? So then spent a few years within the team, picked up different things. So that thing is called basically general purpose compute on NVIDIA, right? Like non-graphics computation on GPU hardware. So over time, we realized that one of the most important non-graphics workloads is AI, right? So we went into scientific computing. We were doing protein folding and CT scan processing and things like that. Those are all non-graphics workloads, right? Like linear solvers, math problems, physics problems. And then we realized AI is probably one of those important non-graphics workloads. And then we were doing AI, and then suddenly AI blew up. Right? All of a sudden, ChatGPT came and AI blew up, and suddenly this was a cool team. Right? Like it used to be the uncool team for the longest time, and suddenly this was cool. Right? So I think even there is an important takeaway, right? Like, so I could say that in 2025, AA is going to become cool. And so I finished my school in 2004. Right? I chose engineering in 2004. I could claim that in 2004, I knew that this is going to become important in 2026. And that's why I came here. And my story looks exactly linear like that if you make that claim. But I don't think it worked out that way. It was just me looking at what is the shiniest object around me and say, "Ooh, shiny," and then run behind that, and then say, "Ooh, shiny," and run behind the other thing. And eventually, something that I thought was shiny, suddenly all of the world is saying that it is shiny. So it's two ways of looking at it, right?
So, Karthik, I'm curious, what does your day-to-day life look like at work? Like, are you just sitting in front of a computer and writing code, or now are you just talking to Claude and telling Claude to write code?
It's an interesting question. So I was a software engineer for a bunch of years in the 2010s, and my day-to-day job looked exactly like how it looks in the movies, right? Like you have a black terminal, and then you're doing tick, 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 tick. So I would spend 2 hours doing that, and then 4 hours I would be staring at a blank piece of paper with a pen in hand and thinking, right? Like, oh, this was supposed to work, it didn't work. What is going on? So when I was a developer, it was, I think, some typing and a lot of banging my head against a wall, wondering why the hell this isn't working. It was supposed to work, and then drawing pictures, and then just staring off into space, just looking, sitting and looking like that, right? Like a lot of my day job was like this, just looking up and then leaning back. So then I switched into management, right? So for a few years, I was building teams. A lot of my day job was around hiring people and then mentoring them and helping them go through staring out into space. Like look at that corner. Answers are in that corner, not in this corner. Right. So nowadays, with this whole vibe coding that is going on, I am so I've been pulled back into development. So these days, I do a lot of software development as a time pass, right? Not as part of my day job, but a lot of my time pass is in writing fun software stuff. And the software development now is very different from how software development was 15 years back, right? 15 years back, you had to type every line and you had to think through the whole thing and compile it yourself, debug yourself. Now you have agents and you have rules and skills and Claude and Cowork and all of that. So in many ways, software development looks very different now. But in many, many ways, the skills required to be successful are the same, right? So essentially, what made someone a good software developer before, those are the same set of skills that makes someone a good software developer now. And I think this is a good segue to talk about what is the nature of writing software, right? So do you want to briefly touch upon what is software? Or do you want to pause and take questions? What do you want to do now?
So I actually want to touch upon something that. So you said earlier that I brought it up earlier that software engineering feels creative.
Yeah.
You said that it's a creative profession.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? Or if anyone would like to take a stab on what do you think Karthik might mean by that? Feel free to raise your hand and I'll call upon you. Or instead of trying to understand what Karthik means, can any of you see creativity in the kind of work that happens for software that you see around you as you learn computer science in school? Where do you see creativity being part of your learning process or your doing process? Feel free to raise your hands or put it down in the chat. So yeah, one creativity is definitely user interface design, right? Because that kind of visual design feels very close to creativity. Yeah, go ahead, Zoya.
Yes, sir. For creativity as well, there are some softwares that can be designed in such a way that you can turn like even a simple story into like a visual novel through coding. There's some softwares where you can do that. So I think you can showcase creativity through that as well.
Okay. So maybe I should phrase the question a bit differently. What do you see as creative pursuits in software? So there, in the example you gave, you are writing down the story. That is your creative pursuit, and the software is converting it into images or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. So what do you see as the creative work that you enjoy doing? So let me switch to Devik. Devik, what do you see as some of the creative work you get to do in your education and learning and work now?
Creative in software engineering, I feel like say you enter code and like the code does not work. So like every person has a different creative method of debugging that code. So I can see creative methods of debugging code as one of the creative ways of like in software.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Devik. Anyone else has? People are talking about game development. That is it's the traditional creativity that we're used to: storytelling, visual design, etc. Right? Someone says the entirety of CSS. Huh. Okay. So, Karthik, what do you see as? What's your reaction to these thoughts?
I mean, those are the typically creative manifestations. I mean, those are the typically what you would think as creative. But I would probably ask the kids a slightly different question, right? Like, I'm sure everyone in this meeting has written Python code, right? Someone must have, at some point, all of you must have written some Python code. So just pause and think, is writing Python code a creative activity? Or do you think of it as something else? Right. I think that would probably get you thinking about what Siddharth is getting at. And I see a mixture of answers already, right? Like some folks are saying creative, some folks are saying not creative, right? So let's take what in is math creative, for example, right? You're doing maths. Is it a formulaic, a prescriptive thing? Like, is there a prescription? Is there a flow chart that you are turning off your brain and you're just solving linear algebra questions? So like, okay, this is trigonometry and I know these formulas, I'm applying it. You turn off your brain and you just apply it. That's one way of doing maths. But there is also the creative way of doing maths where you understand the problem and then you think about what is an efficient way of solving this, or what is a cool way of solving this. What if I applied this principle here? That becomes creative. So I think based on the chat questions, responses, it looks like a lot of children already understand how math can be creative. So from there, think about how essay writing can be creative. Right? Again, all of you would have written essays, right? So in English, they would have asked you to, what do you think is this character thinking? Or what do you think? So they'll give you a story and they'll say, what do you think the author was thinking? Or what do you think is going on? So when you when you solve a mathematical equation, or when you solve a maths problem, or when you write an essay, think of it as two parts, right? So the first part is some basic tools of the trade. So in maths, for example, you need to understand some basic concepts. You need to understand some basic formulas. Only then you can solve the problem, right? Without the basic formulas, you can solve the problem. If you're writing an essay, you need to know basic grammar. You need to know some vocabulary, some words and their meanings, right? So without those skills, you can't write a good essay. Now, I would argue that those are the mechanical aspects of the activity. Those are not creative aspects of the activity. But using those skills, if you write a very coherent essay which argues for a point in many clever ways, right? Like it thinks from different points of view and it thinks and, your essay argues for a point in multiple ways and so on. That is creative. That is very creative, right? Like three people with the same set of grammar and vocabulary skills could write very different essays. One essay might be really boring and another essay might be meandering and it might not make any sense. And the third essay might be really powerful about arguing why war is bad, for example, right? Like if I ask all of you to tell me why war is good or bad, even if all of you are in the same class and all of you have the same set of words and grammar skills, some of you might write really good essays and some of your essays might be a little bit lackluster. Code is like that, right? I think of coding, programming, software engineering, very similar to writing essays. So for example, in an essay, you can't write a grammatically broken sentence, right? Like you can't leave a sentence dangling with a clause. You have to end it in a grammatically correct way. Just the same way, when you write programs, you cannot have grammatical mistakes. So programs are also written in languages, like how essays are written in English. Now, there are some mechanistic aspects of programming, right? Like you need to know the grammar, you need to know the syntax, you need to know how to compile, build, run. Those are all the boring aspects, the mechanical aspects. But once you cross that hump, it really comes down to problem solving. What is the problem you're trying to solve? How do you break it into sub-problems? And then how do you solve each sub-problem? And how do you express the solution to each sub-problem in this language? And how do you put them together? Is a very creative activity because once you master the basic skills, actually writing code resembles a lot like writing an email or writing a WhatsApp message or writing an essay because the syntax just comes automatically. You're just thinking and you're translating your thought into some language. Right? So I think it's important to see software development and coding in that light to start with. It's not a mechanical activity. It is a creative activity.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to keep in mind for that is so often as we go to higher and higher grades, we're told to abandon all our creative pursuits to focus on the learning, on the learning, right? And the point is, like, if you're learning some form of dance or music, and you don't even have to be formally learning it, you could just be taking the time to doodle every day, right? Um, that's the same muscle that you are using to creatively problem solve even in a software career.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's the point that that I think is so important of what you're saying, Karthik. That it's the same muscle that you're training when you're wor- giving your brain creative outlets and taking the time to express yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get a Sudoku, and then you look at the Sudoku config, and then in your mind you are planning, right? Like you're breaking the solution into sub problems, and you're saying, okay, I will probably get this face right, then I'll do the corners, and then for this configuration, this is the rotation I need to do, and then you translate it to your hand movements. Now, a right soon or a left soon or whatever the term is something that is mechanistic, but very soon it is no longer about the operations. It's about planning how to get to a solution and expressing that solution, right? So it could be chess, it could be dance. I completely agree with you, Siddharth. It's about once you get over that initial hump of learning those basic tools, it is all about a problem, sub-problem, solution, and expressing that solution and putting it all together.
Yeah. So, Karthik, I want to ask you the question that I opened the series with, which is, if there was a skill or some kind of learning that you wish you had done more of in school, looking back from your career now, what would that be? What would you wish that you'd spent more time learning or building as a teenager?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have two answers to that. So I will do it one by one. The first answer is being comfortable with uncertainty, right? So the problem is that all through school and all through college, there was always a right answer and a wrong answer, right? And I needed to be fully precise. I needed to be fully exactly correct to get all the marks, right? So there is no question of, there is no room for, I know this part, but then I don't know this part, because no half answers, right? Like I had to get the full answer right. But when I started working, when I started doing more serious software engineering, right? Like rather than hobby projects, when I started working in a company doing software, because it is creative, that means that there is no right answer. Like there are only perspectives. There are only, so I think someone is messaging the same thing in the group, right? Like it's exactly correct. There is no right answer because you're solving a problem that has not been solved before. And there are only multiple ways of approaching it. And the full answer is never visible. You know only a part of the way, and then you don't know the rest of the way. So I found it very difficult, right? Like this environment, making this switch was very difficult for me because I had never exercised that muscle of, okay, I know this part, I don't know this part, let me get started. Let me say that this is what I don't know. And this is the size of the unknown. And worst case, it can be this bad. Best case, it can be this bad. So, some way of describing that uncertainty, saying that worst case, it might become 3 times slower. But I don't know, right? I am 90% sure. But let me try handling the other things and ask for this data that I want. So somehow finding a way to move forward when I am not 100% certain. The problem is some people are naturally comfortable with that certainty, even in school. I'm sure some of you or some of your classmates are like that, right? Like they will know the answer when the teacher asks a question. They will know approximately the right answer, but they will confidently raise their hand and say, ma'am, this is the answer. And then the teacher will say, yes, but this part is wrong. The teacher and the student will talk and quickly they will arrive at an answer. I was never that student. I was always the student who will sit in the corner and then think, try to perfect the answer, get to 100% certainty. By the time I got 100% certainty, the teacher would have moved on to the next subject. Because there would be 3 kids who are very fast, who are approximately correct. They would have quickly had the discussion and they would have moved on. So one skill that I wished, yeah, you're saying something?
No, go ahead. One skill that you wish.
Yeah, one skill that I wished I had learned in school was making progress when I'm 90% sure or when I'm 80%, 85% sure with an answer. And work with the teacher or work with others saying, I know this part I am not sure. So can you help me solve this part? Right? Rather than go off in a corner and then try to polish it and then come with a perfect answer. I feel school
Karthik,
won't encourage that much.
so do you feel like you always waited until an answer was 100% right? You had a fear of giving a wrong answer.
Yes. It was a fear
But
of
it's
answer.
not.
Yeah.
But also, I want to clarify that the child you spoke of before, who raises their hand and confidently gives an uncertain answer, they are also not getting it right 100% of the time.
Correct.
They'll confidently make wrong answers as well.
Yeah. It will be approximately right answer. They will confidently give somewhat thereabouts, there or thereabouts, approximately right answer. But they will quickly work with the teacher and get to the right answer. Oh, I made a mistake in the third step. Oh, that is the problem. Okay, I will go fix it. Or something. Right? Whereas I was very afraid of being wrong. People will laugh at me if I got the wrong answer. What will people think? I should get the perfect answer. 90% is not good enough. Because in schools, you are encouraged to be very precise and very perfect. But I think in real life, being comfortable with this uncertainty is an important thing, especially in a creative pursuit.
Can you give an example of how this skill helps in your career life?
In my
career life?
Yeah, so like I said, if there is a feature that I'm building, right, it might result in 1,000 lines of code, right? Eventually, it might result in 1,000 lines of code. So I will wait till I got all pieces of it correct, till I'm saying done. Whereas some of my colleagues will be like, okay, I'm breaking this down into 4 parts. This piece, I know for sure I am done. This one piece, I am not sure. So I need help. Right? I don't know this part in this piece.
Oh.
So 800 lines they will get right. The remaining 200 lines, they will ask the senior or the manager or someone saying, I don't understand this part. Can you help? So they will actually get to it faster than me sitting in one corner and trying to polish it in one shot.
So, Karthik, what you're referring to there is that when working as part of a team, this this attitude of being okay with uncertainty and being okay with this is what I'm capable of doing. Please, someone help me with the rest. That is helpful. But an element of what you were saying was that it also helps you individually when you're solving problems to be okay with having. So one of the things that I heard in what you were saying was if there's a multi-step thing that you have to do.
Absolutely.
But you get stuck at the first step wanting 100% right answer.
Correct. So the term I have for that is called analysis paralysis. So I wait for, I am paralyzed by the analysis of the problem that I am not solving anything, right? So I wait to understand every piece of it before even starting. So I'm just sitting and scratching my head. I'm not doing anything. Whereas sometimes if I say that, okay, let me start solving it. And then if I solve 2-3 pieces, maybe the solution comes, right? Like as the pieces come together, it's like a jigsaw, right? Like you don't know where all the pieces are going to go, but you start by assembling some pieces and the picture slowly becomes clearer. And I think that's an important ability. Good catch there, Siddharth, that, it's not just about other people. Even when we are working with ourselves, it's important to get started by saying, okay, this part I know, this part I don't know. Let me solve this and then come back to this and see whether it is still there.
Yeah.
In the job, can I tell something?
Go ahead, Aditya.
If you're in the job and you say, I don't know how to do the remaining 200 lines, don't you get criticized for it or judged on it?
No. So it is even worse if I don't speak and if I am sitting in one corner silently and the whole thing fails because I did not speak. So it is important to ask for help. It is okay. It is okay to not know. Like in class, when ma'am is teaching something, if you don't understand something, do you get judged if you ask a doubt?
Not really.
It's
But
like
in
that.
real life, I thought you were actually building stuff. So
Yes.
if you don't know something, probably you get judged because you're supposed to know it by then.
No. So that is because it is a creative activity, right? Like when you're painting, for example, sometimes you're stuck, right? Like when you're writing an essay, sometimes you're just stuck because you have never written that essay before. This is the first time you're writing that essay, and
Alright.
the conclusion doesn't come, right? Have you faced that situation? Sometimes you've written 3 paragraphs, but the conclusion paragraph never comes, or the intro paragraph never comes. You're just stuck.
Oh yeah.
So those things happen even as adults.
So that when we were talking about that we're used to the idea of getting a right answer, Karthik, another thing that you said struck out to me, which was you were so yes, it's good to say that I don't know the answer or I don't know how things work, but there are lots of different kinds of professions in the world,
Yeah.
and we were talking about uh, discipline. And I remember you said this thing that in your uh, in in your experience so far, you found that not discipline, but too much of obedience is uncorrelated with success.
Yes.
You said that, and initially you'd said discipline, but then we corrected it to realize that. So yeah, if you could expand on that, because I think that's very interesting given what you've just discussed.
Yeah. So
What,
by the way,
what do
someone
you
was
mean
asking.
by obedience? Yeah, what do you mean by obedience, and why do you feel like in your profession it is not correlated with success?
Yeah. So someone has just posted a comment saying we did not hear the second part of
Oh,
the
yes,
answer.
the second part of that answer. Yes.
This is the second part of the answer. So
Ah,
we are getting there. And also, Siddharth, after we answer this, I think we should also briefly talk about. Oops, I clicked something. Sorry. We should also briefly talk about the technical part, right?
mhm.
But let's complete
Yeah.
this and come to it because I think some
Yes.
of the people are
Yes.
waiting for the technical part. I think it's
Yes.
important
Yes.
to talk about that. Yeah. So obedience, discipline, right? Like in school, there was a lot of emphasis on obedience, and uh, even our culture also says that listen to your elders, follow rules, right? Come on time, don't shout in class, don't run around in class, submit your homework on time. So there is a heavy emphasis on obeying rules, learning that temperament to obey the rules, right? So I think that is great, but doing too much of it actually ends up harming when you get to a profession like software engineer, because it comes back to that thing of it being a creative activity. You can't impose a lot of obedience and structure and so on something that is fundamentally creative. So we do have deadlines. Let me be very clear, right? We do work very hard. We do have deadlines. We do have status. We do have follow-ups. We have all of the things that, just like how in school you have assignments and due dates and you need to submit and all of that. We do have all of that. So there is a structure, but when it comes to the problem solving methods, right? Like some amount of disobedience is good. You might have a textbook that says these are the best ways of solving this problem, right? You might have your senior saying this is how you shall solve your problem, but some amount of respect has to be given to our intuition also. Right? Okay, no, it feels like I should explore this way of solving the problem to see whether it works, right? So doing something a particular way because a textbook says so, or because your manager says so, or because your teammates say so, or because everyone has done it like that only till now, right? In a creative pursuit, those are not. Sometimes you have to challenge some of those things, right? You have to challenge and say, no, but what would happen if I tried to solve this in a different way, right? Sure, sky is always painted blue. Sky is always painted with plain blue sky and clouds. But if you didn't have someone thinking, what if I do spirals in sky? Then you wouldn't have the Starry Night painting, right? Like before the Starry Night painting was painted, people would have laughed if they said sky will have spirals. Right? I hope everyone knows the painting that I talk about by Van Gogh, right? Which has those blue things with spirals. Think about it. Who paints skies with spirals? I would probably paint spirals on sand or water, maybe, but I would have never thought of painting spirals in sky. But it does lead to something sometimes. Sometimes it will just flop, and that's okay too, right? But I just wanted to say that when you're in any creative activity, it is sometimes okay to challenge convention and try to creatively fail also.
Yeah. And so what was very interesting from that was that we prize that following the rules and staying in the line. And often in creative activities, that doesn't help. But you also pointed out that there are professions where this is extremely important. If you are a nurse in a surgery team, you do not have to be creative at all. If the doctor asks for a particular implement, you hand that implement to them. So there are very important situations, right, where safety is important, where protocols are important, where it's important to stay. So it's always a balance.
Correct. It is pretty stupid and dangerous to exercise your creativity when a patient is on the surgery table, right? The doctor is saying we should do it, and you're like, no, but why not use this other implement? That's not the case for creativity. Thanks for bringing that up again, Siddharth. There is a time and place for these things, right? Obedience is also important. Discipline is also important. Creativity is also important. And I think we need to develop the muscle to know which tool to use in what situation.
Yeah. So now coming to the technical part, as people have been asking. So what do you like? Now things are very different from when you were in school. I was in school at around the same time, and I remember my cousin who now is an aeronautics engineer talking about how on placement day he'd done mechanical engineering. How these IT companies, because he did mechanical engineering in Bangalore, these IT companies, TCS, Infosys came and vacuumed up all the engineering graduates, whether or not their field had anything to do with software. So how do you get into software careers nowadays? Do you recommend a software career nowadays? What are your thoughts on it from being in the field?
Yeah, I mean, so AI is, there is a lot of worry about AI. Is AI going to take away our jobs, right? So is my job relevant anymore? Is AI going to take away our jobs? And I would like to briefly recollect one of the professions from 100 years back or 150 years back, right? So whenever there was a king or a small king or large king or whatever, right? There would always be an accountant next to him somewhere who would keep track of numbers. He would be really good at doing math really fast, keep a lot of numbers in his mind and do very quick calculations so that when the minister asks something or when the king asks something, he can quickly whip up an answer. So when computers came, one of the first software that was really popular and that really made an impact was this software called Tally, right? Tally is an accounting software that is used to keep track of bills and expenses and all of that. All shops started using Tally. And overnight, the job of a biological calculating machine just went away, right? The job of the ability for someone who built a career around just keeping numbers in mind and just being good with numbers, overnight that went away. Now, did the new technology cause job loss? Definitely. But did people go jobless? You know, I would like to phrase it slightly differently, right? Like it's not about job loss, it's about do people go jobless? No, they became CAs. So all of your parents who are CAs now and accountants now, their forefathers in the professional discipline, their jobs are no longer there. But the people have reinvented themselves into a very valid and a very important profession, right? Likewise, with AI, with technology changing, definitely the job of typing code is going away, right? And the job of a traditional programmer is going away. But if you ask me, is there no room for programmers? Then I would disagree, right? I think the role gets redefined, and definitely there is room for software development, which will be augmented with AI and things like that. Now, in terms of specific technologies, I think some people are wanting to hear about Mythos, for example. Right? Let's talk about Mythos. Let's talk about Opus, Sonnet. Again, in September last year, MCP was the hot thing, right? MCP is a protocol which is used to bridge multiple software stacks so that you can then run an LLM and ask it questions. It will fetch data from somewhere else and so on. By the time December came, I went on a 1 week long vacation in December. When I came back, the whole world had changed because Sonnet came and Claude Code came. And with Claude Code, suddenly that was the hot new thing, right? So 3 months Claude Code and Sonnet was the hot new thing. And then Opus came. And Opus blew everything out of the water. And agentic AI came. And OpenClaw came. And suddenly Sonnet is no longer the cool thing, right? Like it is open, it is all about a 1 million context window. It's all about Sonnet, Opus. And my God, 1 million tokens, what all you can do with such a huge context size. And suddenly Claude Cowork has come, right? Like Claude Code is no longer the cool thing. Claude Cowork is now the cool thing because you can do agentic stuff. I can guarantee you that in 3 more months, Claude Cowork and OpenClaw is no longer going to be the cool thing. So Siddharth and I can spend 1 hour talking about the hot new technology today. But at the rate at which things are evolving, by the time you go back and download that stack and learn that, the stack would have changed, right? So I think the focus is deliberately not on the technology that is hot today, but on persistent skills that will stand you in good stead as new technologies come up, right? So yeah, please excuse us if Siddharth and I aren't going to talk about why Mythos is so great, because Mythos is great now, but in 3 months, Mythos is no longer going to be great, right? The next thing would have come by then. So
yeah. So people have also been asking about stress, right? What is stress like in the job world? We're all used to school and stress in school, but what are the things that are affecting your life, your mental health, digital addiction?
That's a very profound question, way beyond what I thought kids would think about. So give me a second to get over the shock of such a question being asked. So, okay, I'm seeing burnout also mentioned. My God.
Yes, burnout was also mentioned.
Yeah, when I was in school, the burnout that I knew was when you hit the accelerator of the car so much that the tires spun and left rubber on the road and a lot of smoke. That was the only burnout I knew. I didn't know this burnout. So, okay. So, stress. Now, some amount of stress is important because some amount of stress is what leads to meaningful things being done. And I'm sure you guys have seen it already in school by now, where you would have hated some exam, some deadline, or maybe there is a performance and you hate practicing for it, right? Like you don't want it and you're really irritated, you're worried about it. But after you've learned it, it makes you feel so good that, oh, I have developed this skill. I have done this exam well, right? So some amount of stress is important because that helps you go over the hump of that initial learning to get to the fun part. right? Initially, it is not fun. After some time, it's fun. And stress is what gets you over that initial non-fun part, right? Now, this is true both for work and for students. So I think it is important to talk about burnout and all of that, right? You don't get burnout because of stress. So when I was younger, I used to think that there is stress, there is more stress, there is more stress, and then I become burnt out, right? It doesn't work that way, right? Burnout is not the same as too much stress. When you have too much stress, you probably just go to bed and sleep, and next day you're okay. Or you chat with friends, or you go for a swim or a walk, and you're okay, right? Burnout comes when you are doing something that you don't like, or you're in an environment that somehow you don't like for too long, and you're forcing yourself to do it for too long, and you just don't want to do it anymore, right? So that is very different from stress, right? So it's fundamentally different. So, and when you're using these terms, I think it is important for you to be careful about which one you're talking about, right? Like, you might not like doing your daily homework, but you might like physics overall, right? And that's okay. Because just because you like physics, it's like what Siddharth said. Siddharth teaches maths, but he still hated middle school maths and high school maths. And that's okay, right? Like, I also hated physics. I did the masterclass on physics, and in school, I somehow hated physics. And that's okay, right? You can still like something while disliking parts of it. And that might cause you stress. And too much work will cause you stress. You might like it, but you might not like the amount of work you have to do, right? So stress is one thing, but burnout is something very different. And if you feel you're burnt out, then you should really question whether you are in the right place long term, right? Like, rather than looking at, oh, tomorrow I have to submit that much homework. If you feel like you're burnt out, then the question to ask is this a subject that I like committing for 5 years to learn? Or do I want to get rid of this subject? So as a child, as a student, as a work, as an employee, I think the answer is the same. Stress is fine. If there is too much stress, you reduce your workload, or you go talk to your parents or friends or whatever. But burnout is something that requires some attention.
So based on that, some people have been asking, and this is a natural question. You're working in NVIDIA. That's so cool. How do I get to work in NVIDIA? What should I be doing today towards getting to a place like that? All the like all the advice on skills and all is fine, but what are the sort of area, like what should I focus on learning? Skills I should build, muscles I should build.
I think do a lot of hobby projects is what I would say, right? I come from software, so I have a very software-centric view of the world. NVIDIA does so many things, right? So it could be, rather than talk about NVIDIA, let me talk about the industry, right? So it could be Intel, it could be AMD, it could be Samsung, it could be Google, whatever it is, right? I think focusing on marks, focusing on doing well in exams is one part of it, and that's important. So that we should talk about that also.
Yes, we'll do that.
But the other thing is saying when you drive past Google Office, or when you're using Google, or when you're using ChatGPT, feeling that desire that, oh, when I grow up, I want to work in a company like that is very good. But rather than leave it at just the desire part, I would say, like what you're doing now, talk to a bunch of people and understand how their day job looks like, and start doing hobby projects that are roughly in line with that. So for example, if you want to get into software, write software. If you want to get into electronics, do electronics, right? Like, for example, I don't know if you all know about GitLab or GitHub. There are these websites where you can upload your source code, your hobby projects. I would say just do hobby projects, learn by yourself, get stuck. Right now, there are so many resources to unstuck yourself, right? Like, bang your head against walls, choose walls and keep banging your head against those walls. And over time, if you build a portfolio of these things, you would have learned a lot of skills that take you there. So, for example, Bose, right? I am sure all of you know about Bose speakers. If you want to grow up and go work for Bose, I would say try to build a speaker by yourself, right? I am sure with a 500 rupee budget, you can build a junk speaker, which is very horrible. The audio quality is pathetic. It cannot do a good job at all. But the amount of things that one learns by trying to build a junk speaker is enormous, right? Like getting your hands dirty, I would say, is the biggest thing. And this is also one of the things I felt my parents kind of guided me because I was writing code when I was in school, right? And that taught me more about software than the courses that I learned or the formal education I took.
Yeah. Karthik, what you're saying reminds me a lot of how when we I used to teach statistics to undergraduates, and we always like the, the classes were completely useless, and we'd say that as teachers that there is very little point in me teaching you statistics. Please pick a question that you care about answering, go about answering it, and fail. Then you will learn statistics.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think we all have that ego that we should take a big problem and solve a big problem, or we should solve a problem that no one has done, right? Somehow there is that inhibition. Like speaker is a good example, right? I know that a lot of us, I also had to work to get over that inhibition. And I see a lot of people have that inhibition that anyone can build a crappy speaker. You just go to Instructables. There is a web page with detailed instructions. You just follow that instructions and you can build a speaker. What is the big deal? But I think there is a lot of value in starting with a small project, right? It might not be great. It might be something that 10,000 people have done. But being the 10,000 and first also, I think there is value in getting just your hands dirty and then building on top of that.
Yeah. And so connected to that, one thing that, and I love your thoughts on it, given the way assessment is going, learning is going, the disruptions that happen in AI, etc. I feel like what you suggested of hobby projects and essentially you come out of your education period or your schooling period with a portfolio of interesting things that you have done.
Yeah.
Right. I remember when 15 years back, it was the cutoff for different colleges at Delhi University 20 years ago. Right. That was the thing that was grabbing a lot of news. Because to get into the very top college in Delhi University, you have to be at 99.8% or something like that. So the marks sort of lost all their meaning. To an extent. And so over time, marks stopped being a useful way of measuring, does this person do what you need? And you hear so many stories of companies that say, no, I don't want someone from college, I'll just take school age people. Right. So, Karthik, you had a really good thought about marks, and I want to ask you about that in this context of all of these projects show things that you have taken the time to do and learn and fail at and figure stuff out. So I think that's why both you and I really like GenWise, because it's a space where people get together and do project-based stuff, right? All our summer camps every year are built around a project. Our online courses are built around sort of building and doing something yourself. But do you feel like marks are unimportant as a result?
That's a great question. So I don't think marks are a reflection of someone's intelligence or worth or how good a person they are, how good an engineer they are, and so on. Right? That is not a way to measure someone's intrinsic worth. But I won't say marks are useless. Because we have chosen a system, right? My children are in 5th grade and 9th grade. Right? We have chosen a schooling system. That schooling system leads to exams. And then from exams, there is college admissions. And the way admissions happen is through marks, right? It is through projects and marks. Now, it is important that when we choose a system, we understand what is required to succeed in that system, right? We have chosen a system. We are all in school. We have chosen a system where beforehand itself they have said, if you score good marks, you get good admission, right? So yes, marks are not, marks are not the be all, end all, everything. But if you want to go to a good college, and if they are saying they will use marks, then you better study hard and score good marks. There is no point fighting after choosing the system, right? You could choose a different system. For example, there are other schooling systems where they just use grades, they don't use marks. They might use only projects, they might not use marks. So if you choose a system there, then there, if you say, no, projects aren't that big a deal, it is the same problem, right? Like you choose a system, you understand what is the way to succeed in that system, and you put in the effort to succeed in that system. So making these grand statements like, oh, marks are not important, I would not stand by that. I agree that marks are not, so if one person got 100 and if another person got 98, I will not say that the person who got 100 is smarter than the person who got 98. No, that is not the right inference to make. But if both of them have chosen the same system, definitely the person one has found a way to be more successful in that system than person two. And I would definitely encourage that in your system, whatever is the way to measure your success, you should work on optimizing for that way also. It's not just about projects. Right? Projects is one part.
So Karthik, do you have marks at your workplace? Like, does something like marks affect your life right now?
Yeah, so we have the equivalent of marks. That's actually a great question. So rather than marks in subjects, what we do is we have ways of measuring how well. So like how in school you have 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and so on. At the workplace also we have grades where junior engineers are in one grade, and then as you grow more senior, you go to higher grades. And for each grade, we have a set of expectations saying for some engineer, just like how you're saying, someone who is in 8th grade should be good at algebra, right? Likewise, we say at workplace that, okay, someone who is in this grade is expected to be good at designing software, not just typing code, right? And we have ways of measuring that. We have ways of measuring, okay, how good is this person doing with design? And we do expect people to do well in those measures. And ultimately, your pay is a function of how well you do as well. So yes, absolutely, Siddharth.
Okay, cool.
Well,
Wait, one moment, Aditya. I think Viraj has had his hand up for a while. Viraj, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to ask that it's like a general question. So you were talking about how AI takes up jobs and it's making things easier for humans and almost making it too easy, which is like not allowing humans to gain control over jobs and slowly lose their jobs to AI models and all that. So since this is not only impacting one area but many areas such as sports also, normal sports are being replaced by esports. Normal jobs like for example files editing, all that, there are already apps like Scribe and Excel which are getting more this thing developed to accommodate more data and develop more just completely more accounts of data, more accounts of files, whatever you want to keep in it. Now using this, there are many people who might struggle to find jobs since they have specialities which AI already cover. And how would you advise a person to what should they focus on to get a proper job and to get something which is not influenced too much by AI, and to how to overcome this problem?
Siddharth, do you want me to take a stab or do you want to go?
Oh, no. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good question, Viraj. Like I was saying, whatever was cool in December has already gone out of date now, right? So the problem that you're phrasing, the problem that you're expressing, is not just a problem for you all who are in school and you are looking at a job 10 years away. It's a problem for us who are working right now because our jobs are changing every month. Right, so the problem that you're expressing is something that we are also facing, right? So the example that I want to take is this, right? 200 years back, fountain pens were very valuable. And anyone who had to express anything required, they had to learn how to write, they had to buy a fountain pen, and then they had to learn good handwriting. So those were important skills. The moment keyboards came and word processors came, suddenly everyone stopped writing by hand. So nowadays, I don't write anything by hand. And when I sign a check, half the time it comes back because my signature itself changes. Because my writing by hand, it is so rusty that even my signature I can't repeat, right? Like it has been a long time since I wrote by hand. So yeah, a skill that was relevant some time back has suddenly gone meaningless now. But if you think about what people used writing for example, expressing their thoughts, right? The skill of when people used to write by hand, it was a very important skill for someone to organize their thoughts, structure an answer, and then put it down neatly in a coherent manner. That skill has not changed. The fundamental skill of thinking hygienically has not changed. But the ability of writing by hand has changed into typing, right? Like I can type with, when I'm turning, looking that side, I can type really fast. It's a different ability, right? So the question that you're asking, I would like to change it slightly as, what are those skills that are persistent? Because the abilities can go away, but what are those skills that are persistent over time? And I think Siddharth and I have been talking about those things all through this session, right? The skills that are persistent, that will really stand in good stead no matter how the technology changes, are things like banging your head against a wall. It's a very, very valuable skill. Being comfortable with uncertainty, building the temperament to do deep work, right? That's something that Siddharth and I spoke about as well, right?
Yeah.
Deep work 10 years back. So when I was doing my master's by research, deep work meant opening 20 PDFs and then sitting down, taking notes and cross-referencing them to build a mental model. Deep work last year meant uploading the 20 PDFs into Notebook LLM and asking it a question, right? And today, Notebook LLM is no longer the cool thing, right? Because Andrei Karpathy has created that knowledge wiki tweet last week. And in 1 week, now the whole thing has changed. People have come up with ways to create that custom knowledge wikis and graphs using Obsidian front end and so on. Everything has changed. But the thing that has not changed is that temperament to sit with 20 different sources and build a mental model, right? So those fundamental things, getting your hands dirty and learning how to get stuck and get unstuck, dealing with uncertainty, I think those are the things that we can equip ourselves with. It's very difficult for us to predict what technology will be relevant down the line.
Yeah, and I'd also add that so one of the things that my colleague Ashish Kulkarni, who is the academic director of our summer program, says is our primary function as mentors, as people running programs, is to build in you a love for learning. Right. So that is the ability to learn is a skill that is never going to go out of date. Right. And so that means what Karthik spoke of earlier, the willingness to make mistakes, the willingness to go with approximations. Right.
That's a great way
so
to
all of those things,
all of them together, right? Like these individual pieces all come under that umbrella thing of, do you learn how to learn? Right? Like learn how to learn. So
yeah. So I think that is really important. And you need to find a space, you need to find a peer group that's willing to do that with you. Right? There have been a lot of questions of, when do you say that I don't know? When do we hand over to a peer? Right? These are all the things that we try to build programs around, so that you're in a peer group that works that way. And I'm not doing this to say, to sell my programs and say my programs are great. This is the reason I do the work that I do, right? That I've seen, we've seen all these things in our life, and therefore we're building structures that enable that for students. Right? And the other thing that Ashish points out to, that I think is going to be that he says, and I agree, is going to be more and more important as time goes on, is your human relationships. Like the network of people that you know, even as weak links, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to be an extroverted person and say that I have 25 best friends. How many best friends do you have? I think you have less best friends. You will be less successful. No, 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 it's not that. Okay. It is, what are the human relationships you've made? The people you've met, you've seen, you've talked to, right? And it need not be a big deal that you had a long conversation with them, but you know they exist. At some point of time, you can say, hey, I think maybe when I'm stuck and banging my head against this wall, I'm going to call them and say, how do I fix this? Or I'm going to write them an email and how do I fix this? Right? So how are you connecting with people out there and taking the time to maintain those relationships?
Yeah, I just wanted to add there, Siddharth. Even in the traditional software engineering job that I was doing with terminal and typing and tick, whatever, this ability to work with other humans, build that relationships and so on was a critical part. Once I crossed that initial hump of learning the tools of the trade, right? Like how to debug, how to type code and all. Once I learned that, asking for help was one thing. But when I create a design, for example, 3 people will have 3 contradictory feedback to it. How do I reconcile everyone's feedback and how do I explain the trade-off? Right? Something might be fast but ugly. So another option might be beautiful but slow. Now, one person might say, I want fast, but it's okay if it is ugly. Another person might say, I want beautiful, but it's okay if it is slow. If I'm building something, how do I balance this tension? Because at one level, it's a technical problem, but at a lower level, it is also a human problem, right? Like, how do I work with these people? How do I influence direction? So, I mean, we don't see that from the outside, but when you get into it, I definitely agree with you that human skills are really important.
Yeah. So I see Mira's hand is up, and then Zoya's. And so, can you give? Let's collect a couple of questions and then answer them together. So, Mira.
Sir, I just wanted to ask, when you explain stress, what do you exactly mean by that? Stress because of things or stress because you want to do it or don't want to do it?
Okay, so is it stress due to external factors or stress due to you wanting to do something and not being able to achieve it? Okay. Then Zoya, I think you just typed out a question saying solutions to the environmental issues caused by artificial intelligence.
Yes, sir. Actually, another one of my peers had asked this, and I was actually pretty curious about this because I had heard
Okay.
that using ChatGPT and LLMs like that actually take up environmental resources, precious ones,
Yes.
that we cannot replace. So I was wondering how there would be a solution to that issues because like when we found a good solution for finding out our problems, issues, and all that, like for debugging code, we can use LLMs, ChatGPT, everything. But then when you use that solution, you find even more problems. So that's why I want.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Zoya. Arnav? Arnav Arora? If there are more Arnavs?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you have a question. Your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know, like, what all industries are there? And I recently had gotten pretty interested in like making games. So, what's your view on the game making games industry?
Okay. Great, thanks. So I think we've got 3 questions so far. One is where do you run into stress from, and the other is the environmental impact of AI and how do we find one good thing but then find bad things under it, which if Karthik doesn't mind, I will take. And then Arnav wanted to know a sort of big picture of like he likes games, but what's the industry out there?
Okay. Yeah. So the game industry is So there is something called a game engine, right? Like which handles the physics of the games. And so, for example, there is a step and then there is a character. When the character comes against the step, the character should not go into the step. The character should hit and then jump and land. So
Yes, sir, I know.
right. So there is something called a game engine which models all the physics and the constraints and so on. So the mechanics of the game is handled by the engine. And then there is the artistic aspect of it, where the step could be modeled as a black box, or it could be modeled as granite with nice shading and beautiful light and so on, right? So then there is the storytelling aspect of it. Why is there a step? What is the character doing, right? Is the character expected, is the step a minor thing, or is the character expected to have an insight as he crosses the step? So there is the creative storytelling aspect of it, right? And then what angle do you show? And then what are the game? There is a mathematical aspect to it, right? Like nowadays, games have a lot of math built into them. So this is at the game level. Then below that, you have the system software, right? Like you are running your game on a Windows PC. So you could build the software that goes into the OS or Linux or some OS like that. You could write the software for a graphics card. And then you could go even further and design the chip, the Intel chip that is running it, or the AMD chip that is running it, or the NVIDIA chip that is running it, whatever. So there is a lot of this. When you say games, there is so much around it. For example, you could go into marketing and you could be thinking about how to sell the game, right? You could be the social media handle person and talk about how to engage with the community for the game. You could be the tester for the game. So yeah, I mean, any one thing you take, it's a huge world and there are so many aspects to it. There are so many things to explore there.
No, I mean like in the aspect of AI taking our jobs. So will it like take for the gaming industry?
A person using AI to develop better games will definitely take away the job of someone who is not using AI to build games. Did you understand that?
Yes, sir, but then what will they do?
Yeah, because the person who is taking the job will be using AI to develop better games. So the person who is now not using AI and creating games, to make sure he doesn't lose his job, he needs to pick up AI as a tool, right? It's like saying, I will build a house, but I won't use screwdrivers. How can you build a house without using a screwdriver? At some point, somewhere you will have to use the tool, right?
So also, I think I'll tie this into the environment question that Zoya and someone earlier also asked. There are some questions that are not technical in nature. There are lots of problems that are not technical in nature, right? So we kind of need to decide as a society that, okay, if technology is changing, this set of jobs is going away. What should we be doing about it as a society? Right? There are lots of answers to it. Should there be a universal basic income? There are so many different approaches to it. And in fact, I think people who are doing the social sciences and humanities are even more important, right? Because you no longer need armies of junior software developers sitting in TCS, right? So that then towards the point of LLMs and the environment, it's been quite a contentious debate. The best data I have seen on it so far does this job shows it in a way where they compare the cost of the average LLM prompt to other things that you do, right? And when you compare it to the water that is taken to wash cars or the water that is used to, so if I remember it right, all the LLM data centers in the US use less water than watering all the golf courses in the US. Okay, so now this is a question not of the technicality of it, but of assigning human like human based values as a society to what do we value, right? And so these are so yes, there are environmental costs. Because a single data center handles billions of requests, it is an it feels like a really, really massive cost. But when you look at it to scale and look at the per chat cost, or when you spending 4 hours on chat GPT per day versus something else, then it ends up being quite small. However, having a massive data center in your backyard is very bad for your air quality, your water quality, your local power bills. And this is a problem that the US is running into, where several states are stopping the development of data centers, because again, these are all governance issues. They are not technical issues, and they will not have technical solutions, but they will have solutions of people trying to figure out, getting together and trying to figure out things. Right.
Something after this?
One second, Aditya. So also,
before you move on to that question,
yes.
There is also one more angle that I wanted to take. So let me know if you are done so that I can.
No, I'm done. I'm done with that. Yeah.
So the other angle also is that if you look at the cost of using an LLM 2 years back to the cost of using an LLM now, there is a steep drop, right? So things are becoming more and more efficient as we build more. So it's like refrigerators. So in the 90s, I think most of the kids here wouldn't know, but their parents would probably know. Ozone hole was a big deal in the 90s. Like there was so much chatter about UV rays are coming in because we have poked a hole in the ozone layer because of the coolant, the CFCs that we were using in refrigerator coolants, right? Like refrigeration, having a fridge was a great thing, but the chemicals we were using were actively harming our environment. And then at some point, as a society, we decided that we will not use the technology. So we did not kill off the refrigerator because the value it brought to the society was high, but we went to more sustainable ways of doing that, right? I feel like I am an optimist here. So this is my perspective. I feel like the technology will evolve into more energy efficient ways. Definitely having that data center is bad, but the energy cost is also going to come down. And also, one way of looking at it is looking at the golf course kind of thought process. The other thought process also is we are discovering new drugs at an unprecedented rate, thanks to technologies like this. So it's not a binary, it's not an easy question to ask. Oh, is it good or bad, right? There are so many dimensions to sit and debate. It's a very complex question to ask.
Yeah. Okay. So we are now at 1.5 hours into the session, which is the point where we said that we would we expected this to be 1 hour, but we ran into 1.5 hours. So I think we need to wrap up. But I just want to hear from Harshadit and Faris, since you've had your hands up for a while. And Aditya, since you've had the chance to ask a question so far, I'm going to skip your question for now. So Harshadit?
Can I just ask one quick question? Quickly.
Aditya, in the chat, please, let's go through what Harshadit and Faris wanted to ask.
Aditya, you type your question on chat and I will respond to your question on chat. Okay?
Sir, so if we know that most of the things by the time we are done with school and all are going to get outdated, then why are schools teaching things that are not outdated right now?
Okay, thanks Harshadit. And Faris, if I could get your question.
Yes, sir. Sir, some people say that in IT jobs, about 20% of the job is like you have to use coding, and then the other 80% you use in planning and in testing. But then why do professionals mostly focus on coding? And then how does this imbalance impact the success of these IT projects which are being developed?
Okay. Karthik, I feel like both of them are kind of related. Huh.
I mean, you're right. What Faris is saying is right. Typing code is a small part of the job. even without AI, if you remember, I said I used to spend a large part of my day looking at the top left corner, just thinking, right? Just sit with a pencil and paper, a pen and paper, and just think. So coding is not the large aspect of work. It has never been, typing code has never been the large part of being a software engineer. So I think it's a well understood fact in the industry. So maybe folks coming from outside are surprised by this. And to the other question from Harshadit, yeah, I mean, we forget most of the books we read. Why do we still read? And I mean, if we go to the pool, we swim, we put a lot of effort to come back to the same point. What is the point of that? If you go to the gym and if you are pumping iron, it's a piece of metal that we lift and put back and lift and put back. So what's the point of that? Right? What I'm trying to convey with that example is that sometimes the point of learning something is not whether you remember that thing that you learned or not, but the point of learning something is what Siddharth said. Are you learning to learn? Right? Like there is a point below that. It maybe it doesn't matter that maybe you will never use algebra in your life. Right? After your 10th grade, maybe you will never use algebra in your life. But banging your head against algebra, learning how to think through it, teaches you a skill that will become really important later on. So algebra might not be the thing that you are learning now that is valuable. What is valuable is you are learning how to learn algebra. And having learned how to learn algebra, learning how to do, advanced chemistry might not be too different at that level. So you might be learning some fundamental skills. And that's how I would see it. I would not just write it off as, oh, this is all meaningless. Throw it in the dustbin.
Yeah. So Meera was also asking about stress. Like where she'd asked earlier that where is this stress coming from? I think Meera is thankfully a very happy child. If this is the same Meera who I've taught before. So what is the source of stress in people around us? I think Meera, that would be that right there for the vast majority of people in India, having enough money to meet a year, they don't have 1 year worth of savings. Right? For 1 year worth of savings is a lot, right? So one source of stress comes from just life and livelihood. Do you have enough for life and livelihood? Other aspects of stress, I think, come from, Karthik touched upon it earlier, that are you in a workplace? Are you in a workplace and a living place that is conducive to you, right? So, yeah. So I asked in the chat. I know we're way over time. So first of all, I'd like to thank Karthik for taking the time out to sit and talk with us well over time as well.
Always fun. Thank you for the chance.
Yeah, but before we wrap up, I would like to share with you about what else we have coming up, and also please do share in the chat of who would you like to hear in the coming months. I'd like to do this every month, sit down and have a conversation with someone interesting like Karthik. Kind of selfishly interested in it, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys. But what kinds of jobs, careers would you like to hear from, and what would you like to be done differently? This is the first time we've done it. So what would you like to be done differently? Do put your thoughts in the chat, and I will make sure to read the chat after the meeting. I just wanted to share that this month we have 2 more things coming up. So in addition, on the 25th of April, that is 2 weeks from now, we will meet again at this time, where every month or 2 months, I will be running a series on climate change. I feel strongly about it and feel like I want to do some education about it. So I'm outside of work time, I'm sitting and teaching about climate change. Please do join in if you're interested. the link is up I'll put it in the chat, and you'll receive it on email. And next, on the first Sunday in May, this is for your parents, so do tell your parents that we're having a discussion about what does it mean to learn from YouTube. Okay, because that's again, like, it's not a discussion that would have happened 20 years ago, but I think it's an important discussion now of what does it mean to be learning from YouTube, right? So thank you all for coming in. I'm happy to stay for another 5 minutes and get your thoughts. So far, one person has asked about biological jobs, lots of medicine, psychology, and journalism. Oh, excellent. Yes. But since there are so many people asking for medicine, maybe we should do the standard engineer, doctor, lawyer, trifecta, and then move to other disciplines. But yeah, okay. I will hunt out an interesting doctor for you guys to meet. Okay, just be mindful that since I'm the one who's choosing people, you might end up getting less technical and more philosophical responses than you would otherwise expect. Okay, thank you all for coming today, and we will we'll be in touch.
Thank you, folks.
Feel free to unmute while you're saying bye, and I will start.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye, sir.
Yes. Bye. Wait, Aditya had a question. What was Aditya's question?
He deemed me started.
He got answer.
He deemed you an experienced engineer.
Oh, you saw the question, huh?
You're an experienced engineer. How do you think it's time to ask your peers for help?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And I sent it back. I sent the response.
Excellent.